Crysta Creations presents Searching for the Truth. A fantasy. Written by Crysta. Featuring the voice of Crysta as Kaylee. Introduction. Hidden within the shadows, Kaylee sneaks through the eroding cabin, her fingers trembling as they brush against the rough wooden wall. With bated breath, she locates and releases the door latch, cracking open the ancient portal. Pausing to listen for the squeaking hinge over the pounding rhythm of her drumming heart, she lets out a sigh of relief when, for the first time since coming to stay with her aunt and uncle, it doesn't make a sound. In a blinding flash, the shadows vanish, as the rays of the morning sun flood into the chamber before Kaylee can even blink, robbing her of sight. The dazzling radiance envelops her silhouette, as she waits for her eyes to adjust to the brightness. Within seconds of regaining her vision, she lifts and repositions a bulging pillowcase onto her shoulder. Pushing the door wider, the corroded hinges make a loud protesting squeak, deepening the preteen's anxiety. Her throat tightens in alarm, and she strains her ears, listening for any indication her two so-called guardians might be waking, silently pleading with the fates.
Please, don't let them wake. Not yet.
Rustling blankets from the next room force her hand, which tosses the pillowcase outside. In a clumsy spin, the tide sack passes between the thick foliage of leaves and lands with a light thud behind an overgrown bush, just out of sight. Spinning about, her back to the open door, she searches the shadows lurking near their bedroom, expecting one of them to appear and question her. Her mouth opens in a fake yawn, knuckles rubbing non-existent sleep from her eyes. A lie prepares itself.
I was just on my way to the outhouse.
But neither her aunt nor uncle stumble into the room. No angry voice calls out to question her. Surprise stays her feet, and she pricks her ears once more. The snores of undisturbed slumber drift back through the dark shadows, still clinging about their room. Her breath escapes through parted lips. Rolling her shoulders, offers only a hint of relief, as her nerves send tingling sensations throughout her slender frame.
I can do this,
she thinks, as she crosses the threshold and sets foot on the dirt path, leaving the dilapidated cabin behind. The chill of the ground sends shivers coursing through her bare feet, prompting her toes to curl. Taking deliberate, soothing breaths, soon relaxes them.
I have to do this.
Leaving the door ajar, cautious of it making another squeak, she tiptoes away from the house, picking up her pillowcase from the bush. Once distance has shrunk the shack cabin, her flying feet race as quickly as her thoughts.
1 hour. I've 1 precious hour to gain as much distance as I can before they wake and discover my absence. To be caught.
As the thought of being caught takes hold, she shudders, realizing the cabin she once thought was a refuge is nothing more than a prison. Within its walls, she was constantly criticized by the aunt for her perceived shortcomings, whereas the uncle brutally assaulted her, shattering both her aspiration to break free and her spirit to fight back. Worse still, she knows their plans. She overheard their hushed conversation of selling her to the mysterious man dressed in black.
I can't help but think.
She ponders, her voice carrying through the air, startling a bluebird, nesting on 3 delicate eggs. The bird flutters its wings, and its distressed chirps harmonize with her words.
In just an hour they'll wake, consumed with thoughts of how they'll enjoy the wealth they hope to gain. Assuming I'm outside, tending to my morning chores, they'll eagerly await the man who will bring them their payment. Once he comes, they'll suspect that I'm purposely avoiding the stranger as a precautionary measure.
A shiver of disgust runs down her spine, causing her to grimace.
After a quick search, they'll realize not only have I disappeared, but the promise of their precious gold has vanished as well.
Over the past week, Kaylee dedicated herself to gathering the few necessities she'll need. Under the cover of night, with stealth and secrecy, she'd hidden fruits and leftover heels of bread into her concealed cache. Securing them within a pillowcase she'd stowed away beneath her cot. Now, there's nothing left to do but hopes she doesn't run into the man swathed in black on the road. To avoid the possibility, she swerves across the grassy field, only half aware of the dew-soaked blades clinging to her bare legs. Her desperate bid for freedom compels her to sprint, despite her bare feet struggling to gain traction, causing them to slip and slide across the damp turf and soil. She's running for her freedom and life, not daring to look back. The people, back in the little house, are best left forgotten. The absence of seagulls and crashing waves strengthens her belief she's far removed from her beloved coastal homeland. Working up a layer of sweat as she runs, the sharp pain of saline sweat drops trailing down her brow splash into her eyes, triggering a surge of memories, reminding her of the chaotic days leading up to her arrival. She recalls the fear and anxiety that consumed her parents when the elven healer assigned to Edgewater failed to determine the cause of her illness. Both physically and mentally, she suffered from pain and confusion as her fever continued to rise, and her breathing became labored. Finally, after the course of a year, she's restored to full vitality. She knows for a fact she first arrived at the cabin just after her 12th birthday, but what about the rest? The illness, grief, and abuse often left her in delirium, continually drifting in and out of consciousness. How much of what she remembers of her former life is accurate? She can't say. Yet, it's all she has to hold on to. One by one, each disjointed memory comes back like a hazy dream. The simple task of opening her eyes has become a Herculean effort, making it impossible, as Kaylee awakens into a world of darkness. Still burning from within, she thrashes, fighting with a tight cocoon that clings to her. The suffocating wrap doesn't budge. An icy sting on her face silences her cry. Her body contorts in pain, her voice reduced to feeble gasps, as she longs to push the icy offender away, but her arms betray her weakness.
Mother, why's she fighting us?
Juniper.
Kaylee's maid and dearest friend. In her soothing presence, the ice-cold touch reveals its true nature, a gentle caress of a moist cloth brushing over her forehead. The towel dips lower, wiping cooling damp streaks along either side of her neck.
She doesn't understand we're trying to save her.
Kaylee recognizes Jane's voice. The captain of the guard and Juniper's mother, stationed here at home in Edgewater.
Kaylee, stop struggling. You have to come with us for your own safety.
Trust slows her struggles. The blankets are no longer restraints, but a warm embrace, and Kaylee sinks back into her fevered unconsciousness. She must have slept, because when she wakes, the gentle rise and fall of a boat rocks her cramping, sore body. Unsure how much time has passed, she scrapes her rough tongue against the roof of her mouth. It feels like days since she's had anything to drink.
Water.
She whispers through dry, parched lips. Someone lifts her head, sliding a sliver of dripping ice into her mouth.
Here, it's all we have at the moment.
Juniper's voice coos in her ear.
Let it melt on your tongue.
Kaylee feels the vibrations in Juniper's chest, and the comforting support of her friend's arm looped under her head. Once the liquid is swallowed, she asks,
Why can't I open my eyes?
It's just a cold compress. Try to rest now, we're not due to land for another few hours.
Juniper helps to lower her head, back to a pillow on the firm wooden planks. And the sway of the boat, as it crests over each wave, soon sends Kaylee drifting off again. Emerging from a void of unconsciousness, Kaylee's eyes flutter open, greeted by Jane's concerned expression. She finds herself still wrapped like a shrouded corpse, being carried in the captain's arms. As Jane walks down the dock, Kaylee watches the small fishing boat fade away over her shoulder. Juniper, walking beside her mother, lifts the hood of her traveling cloak to cover her hair. Kaylee shifts her gaze, hoping to see two more familiar figures, but they walk alone into a small coastal town. The distant sound of a bell resonates, tolling a somber death knell. With each clang, Kaylee's heart quickens, filled with an urgent question.
Where are my parents?
They're missing,
Jane says as they approach a modest stable in the center of the unfamiliar town. A young stable boy hurries out to greet them, and Jane orders a pair of saddled horses for the day. The moment the stable boy disappears among the hay-filled stalls, Jane continues, her tone infused with a subtle hint of worry.
You'd best ride with me.
As the second toll of the town bell rings out, a horse responds with a gentle nicker. The mournful sound sends shivers down Kaylee's spine, prompting her to seek solace by leaning into Jane's shoulder. Meanwhile, Juniper shields her own unease by pressing against her mother's leg, finding comfort in the physical connection.
Where are we going?
Kaylee asks, her voice weakening as a wave of dizziness returns to claim her.
Somewhere you'll be safe.
Oh, how Jane and Juniper clung to Kaylee. Their eyes welled up with tears. Each hugged her, as they begged her to stay with the people they kept calling her aunt and uncle. She made a vow to remain until the mother and daughter returned for her, solidifying her commitment before their departure. They promised it wouldn't take long, but Kaylee lost faith in them a few months ago. Now, a month shy of her 13th year, she's certain they're never coming back. She can't sit around, enduring abuse and waiting for someone else to save her.
Once I reach the forest, I can hide among the trees while searching for the sea. Then I'll begin looking for Mother and Father.
With a mere 5 yards separating her from the forest, her foot gives way, causing her to collapse onto the ground. The contents of the pillowcase spill everywhere. Quickly crawling to the full water skin and scattered pieces of clothing, she stuffs them back in. The small morsels of food she hid away over the past week, she places on top. From the corner of her eye, she spots her worn-out shoes and crawls to them. With a smile, she tugs them on and springs back to her feet. They're her only pair, with soles worn thin and straps holding by threads, but still better than nothing. Her hands slide over newly acquired mud and grass stains as she smooths the threadbare nightgown down to her knees. With a steadying breath, she swings the bulk of the pillowcase back over her shoulder and sprints for her destination, making up the lost seconds. The vigorous bounces of the bulging sack propel her onward, reminiscent of the rushing undercurrents of the tide. Hope swells within her like a songbird's first chirp to the sunrise as the tree line draws closer, and the air becomes dense with sharp woody aromas cutting through the abundant moss. The moment she crosses into the canopy's shade and disappears into the cover of the forest, she notices a different, crackling quality in the air.
Is this? It must be. I'm in wild woods.
She'd always believed that the rumors of magic in wild woods were only stories told by grandmothers to prevent young children from wandering off into them. True or not, at least she now knows where in Archipelago she is. Out of breath, a few yards into the woods, she dares to pause. Savoring the refreshing cool water, she sips from the waterskin. A rustling in the leaves to her left sets her heart racing again. Her head whips around, eyes squinting through the shadowed recesses between thick tree trunks. Her imagination conjures the swish of a black cloak, the tip of a black cowl.
The man in black has come to collect.
A scream forms in her throat, but before it's released, relief steals it away, replacing it with a quick gasp of awe. Through the lush foliage, the head of a doe emerges, adorned with velvety brown fur. Its soft black eyes, shimmering with curiosity, lock onto Kaylee's gaze. The doe blinks, studying her intently, before giving the air a quick sniff, to ensure its safety. Kaylee's trembling hands gradually still, and she takes another sip of water, feeling the cool liquid refresh her parched throat. As she corks the bag and slips it back into the pillowcase, she watches the doe wander off. All the while, pondering the single question that continues to haunt her mind.
What if Jane and Juniper sent the two men dressed all in black? Should I go back?
Leaning against a thick tree trunk, she takes a moment to let her thoughts drift back to the week before, hoping to dig through every detail and pluck out the truth. With the shack cabin hidden deep within the wilderness, the distant sound of horses traveling in her direction surprises Kaylee. She tries to blink away the mirage of silhouettes on the road, but they remain. The seclusion of the cabin, coupled with a constant reminder to avoid detection, prompts Kaylee to take refuge behind the stone base of the wood-roofed water well. The bucket she intended for the chicken's trough overturns at her side, sloshing cold liquid over her feet. She peeks over the well's lip and looks down the road, curious about the pair of men on horseback, clip-clopping up to the shack's front door. Shifting her position to avoid detection, Kaylee watches one man dismount and wrap his riding crop on its weather-worn frame. When her aunt and uncle emerge, they throw the door wide for him to step inside. Bewildered by their open invitation, Kaylee crawls behind the line of some overgrown hedges, to inch up to the side window, while avoiding the second mounted man's attention. Low, secretive tones of a conversation can be heard as she approaches the cracked window, and she listens closely. In alarm, Kaylee sucks in a deep breath, as the murmurs coalesce into clearly discernible whispers. Her fate would change in 1 week, when the man returns with a large sum of gold in exchange for her purchase. He vows to remove the child, giving the aunt and uncle every assurance they'll have no further contact with her. Shaken, Kaylee gulps for breath on hands and knees, as her uncle seals the arrangement with a coarse laugh and a handshake at the door. The man turns from them with a satisfied nod, and rejoins his companion waiting with the horses. Pushing a branch aside for closer observation, Kaylee takes in every detail of both men as they talk. They're human, she realizes, with sun-kissed complexions. Both dressed all in black, from cowl-hooded cloaks to black riding pants, tucked into a pair of polished black boots.
"It's done,"
says the dealmaker to his friend.
"Are the 2 crates ready, Malos?"
The second man's discomfort is betrayed by the sound of his gulp. His fingers nervously twitch as he manipulates the horse's reins, all the while avoiding his companion's gaze.
"Yes, Narchus."
"Good. Collis will be pleased."
Their names are as foreign to her as their faces, and neither speak of Jane or Juniper, so they didn't send the men. Cold panic sets deep in Kaylee's bones at the thought of being bought. Her heart canters in chorus to the speed of their horses as the 2 men ride off. As they become dots on the horizon, her fretting mind finally has space to think. An idea forms quickly. She'll have an entire week to prepare. The moment the coast is clear, she returns to her chores, working out the finer details of her plan in silence and toil. She won't be here when the men dressed in black return. Nor will she remain in the clutches of her cruel, money-hungry aunt and uncle any longer.